You know that feeling when you're standing at the edge of something beautiful, something you've dreamed about your entire life, and then, silence? That's where my story begins. Not with cheers or congratulations, but with the coldest, most devastating silence I'd ever experienced. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how my own family refused to attend my wedding. How they looked me in the eyes and told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. How they called me selfish, ungrateful, and worse. But most importantly, this is the story of how I exposed the truth that had been hidden for 27 years. A truth so shocking that it didn't just change my wedding day, it changed everything. It started on a sunny Saturday morning in March. I remember the date exactly, March 14th. I was sitting in my apartment with my fiancé, Marcus, surrounded by cream-colored envelopes. Wedding invitations. We'd spent weeks choosing the perfect design, elegant script on thick cardstock with delicate gold trim. Each envelope had been addressed by hand because I wanted this to be personal. I wanted everyone to feel how much they meant to us. Marcus squeezed my hand as I sealed the envelope addressed to my parents. "They're going to be so happy," he said, his dark eyes warm with excitement. "Your mom's been waiting for this day since you were born." I smiled, but there was a knot in my stomach I couldn't quite explain. Something felt off. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the memories of all those family dinners where conversations would suddenly stop when I entered the room. All those whispered phone calls my mother would take behind closed doors. All those times my father couldn't quite meet my eyes. But I pushed those feelings down. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. Marcus was everything I'd ever wanted, kind, successful, supportive, and deeply in love with me. We'd met 3 years ago at a charity event, and from our first conversation, I knew he was different. He didn't just listen, he heard me. He didn't just see me, he understood me. The wedding was planned for June 20th, just 3 months away. We'd chosen a beautiful venue by the lake, with gardens full of white roses and a reception hall with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. It was going to be magical. I delivered my parents' invitation personally the next day. I drove to their house in the suburbs, the same house I'd grown up in, with its perfectly manicured lawn and the oak tree I used to climb as a child. My mother answered the door, and I'll never forget the look on her face when she saw me standing there with that cream envelope in my hand. "Sarah," she said, and there was something in her voice, something cold. "Come in." My father was in the living room, sitting in his usual chair with the newspaper. He didn't look up when I entered. That should have been my first clue. "Mom, Dad," I said, my heart racing with excitement. "I wanted to give you this personally." I held out the invitation. My mother took it slowly, as if it might burn her fingers. She opened it carefully, read the words I'd written inside. Words about love and family and the beginning of a new chapter. And then she looked at my father. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Finally, my father set down his newspaper. He looked at me for the first time, and his expression was harder than I'd ever seen it. "We need to talk, Sarah." Those 4 words. 4 simple words that made my blood run cold. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's why I'm here. I wanted to talk about the wedding, about what you'd like to do, maybe help with some of the planning." "We're not coming to your wedding," my mother interrupted. The world stopped. I actually felt dizzy, like the floor had tilted beneath my feet. "What? You heard your mother," my father said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "We will not be attending your wedding to Marcus Thompson." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for someone to laugh and say it was a joke, but nobody laughed. My mother wouldn't even look at me. She just held that invitation like it was contaminated. I don't understand," I stammered. "You like Marcus. You've always been supportive of our relationship." "What's changed?" "Everything has changed," my mother said quietly. "You're making a terrible mistake, Sarah." "That's what's changed." "A mistake?" I felt anger rising through the shock. "How is marrying someone I love a mistake?" "Marcus is good to me. He treats me with respect. He has a stable career. He wants a family." "What more could you want?" My father stood up, and when he spoke, his voice was loud enough to make me flinch. "We want you to call off this wedding." We want you to stop this ridiculous charade before you humiliate yourself and this family." Charade? Tears were burning my eyes now. "Dad, this is my life. This is the man I love. How can you call it a charade?" "Because you don't know what you're doing," my mother said, and now she was crying too. But her tears felt different from mine. They felt guilty. "You don't understand the situation you're putting us all in." "Then explain it to me," I shouted. "Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me why my own parents are refusing to come to my wedding." But they didn't explain. My father just shook his head and said, "The decision is made, Sarah. We will not be there. And if you have any sense, you'll reconsider this entire thing." I stood there in that living room, in the house where I'd grown up, where I'd celebrated every birthday and holiday, where I'd felt safe and loved, and I felt like I was looking at strangers. "Fine," I said, my voice breaking. "Don't come. But don't expect me to forget this. Don't expect me to forgive this." I turned and walked out. My mother called after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I'd stopped, I would have collapsed right there on their pristine lawn. Marcus held me while I cried that night. He didn't say much, just let me sob into his shoulder while the world I thought I knew crumbled around me. When I finally pulled myself together enough to speak, all I could say was, "There's something wrong. There's something they're not telling me." "We'll figure it out," Marcus promised. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." But I had no idea just how deep the secrets went. No idea that my parents' refusal was just the beginning of the nightmare that was about to unfold. The next 2 weeks were some of the darkest of my life. Not only had my parents refused to attend my wedding, but word spread through my family like poison. One by one, relatives I'd known my entire life started calling with their regrets. My Aunt Jennifer, who'd taught me to bake cookies when I was 6 years old, left a voicemail saying she supported my parents' decision and wouldn't be able to make it. My Uncle Robert, who'd walked me to school every day for a year when I was being bullied, sent a cold email declining the invitation. My cousins, the ones I'd grown up with, shared secrets with, played with every summer, they all fell silent. Within a week, I'd lost 37 RSVPs. 37 people who were supposed to celebrate with me had turned their backs. The only family members still planning to attend were my grandmother on my father's side and my cousin Lisa, who lived across the country and barely knew my parents anymore. Marcus's family, thankfully, remained supportive. His mother called me every other day just to check on me, and his sister Emily came over with wine and tissues more times than I could count. But their kindness only made the rejection from my own family hurt more. I became obsessed with understanding why. Every night I'd lie awake trying to piece together clues from my childhood. Were there signs I'd missed? Were there conversations I should have paid more attention to? But nothing made sense. My childhood had been normal, happy even. Birthday parties, family vacations, holiday dinners. There had been love. Or at least, I thought there had been. Marcus tried to convince me to just let it go. "Maybe it's better this way," he said one evening as we sat on our balcony. "We don't need people at our wedding who don't support us. We'll have our friends, my family, and the people who actually care about us. That's enough." But it wasn't enough. Not for me. Because this wasn't just about the wedding anymore. This was about truth. This was about understanding who I really was and why the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had abandoned me at the most important moment of my life. That's when I decided to dig deeper. I started with my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia. She lived 2 towns over and had always been the family gossip. If anyone knew what was really going on, it would be her. I showed up at her house unannounced on a Thursday afternoon. She looked genuinely shocked to see me standing at her door. "Sarah," she said, glancing behind me as if checking whether I'd brought witnesses. "This isn't a good time. I need 5 minutes," I said firmly. "That's all. 5 minutes to understand why my entire family has turned against me." She hesitated, then sighed, and let me in. We sat in her kitchen, surrounded by the smell of fresh coffee and the ticking of an old wall clock. The normalcy of it all felt surreal given the conversation we were about to have. "Aunt Patricia," I began, keeping my voice calm and measured, "I need you to tell me the truth. Why won't my parents come to my wedding? Why has everyone abandoned me?" She looked down at her coffee mug, her fingers trembling slightly. "It's complicated, Sarah, then uncomplicated." Please, I'm begging you." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "They made me promise never to tell you." "Your parents, they made the whole family promise." My heart started racing. Promise what? What secret is so terrible that it's worth destroying your relationship with your niece? "It's not my secret to tell," she whispered. "But you will tell me," I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. "Because I deserve to know why I'm being punished. I deserve to understand what I've done wrong." "You haven't done anything wrong," she said quickly. "That's the thing, Sarah, you're innocent in all of this. But your mother, she's been carrying this guilt for almost 30 years. 30 years. I'd just turned 27, which meant— "This is about my birth," I said slowly. "Isn't it?" Aunt Patricia's face crumpled. That was all the confirmation I needed. "Tell me," I demanded. "Whatever it is, whatever secret my mother has been keeping, tell me right now, or I swear I will never speak to you again. I will cut you out of my life just like you all tried to cut me out of yours." She broke. I watched it happen, watched years of carrying someone else's secret finally become too heavy. She took a shaking breath and said, "Your mother had an affair. When she was married to your father, she had an affair with someone from her work, and when she got pregnant with you—" The world tilted. "I'm not my father's daughter." "No," Aunt Patricia whispered, "you're not." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. I couldn't breathe. 27 years of my life, 27 years of calling that man Dad, and it had all been a lie. "Does he know?" I asked. "My dad, the man I thought was my dad. Does he know?" "He found out when you were 3 months old," she said. "Your mother confessed. It nearly destroyed their marriage. But they decided to stay together, to raise you as their own, to never tell you the truth. They thought it would be easier that way." Kinder, I laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. "Kinder to lie to me for my entire life? They wanted to protect you?" "No," I cut her off. "They wanted to protect themselves. From embarrassment. From shame. From having to face the consequences of their choices." Aunt Patricia reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Sarah, please understand. Who is he?" I asked. "My biological father." "Who is he?" She shook her head. "I don't know." "Your mother never told anyone. She just said it was someone from work, someone who moved away before you were born. She said he didn't know about you, didn't know she was pregnant." I stood up, my legs shaking. "And Marcus?" "What does Marcus have to do with any of this?" Aunt Patricia looked confused. "Marcus?" "Nothing. Why would Marcus?" "Then why won't they come to my wedding?" I practically shouted. "If this is just about some 30-year-old affair, what does that have to do with me getting married? Because Marcus is black, Sarah." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. At first I didn't understand. Then, slowly, horrifyingly, the pieces started fitting together. "They think—" I couldn't even finish the sentence. Aunt Patricia nodded miserably. "When you introduced them to Marcus, when they saw him, saw how serious you two were." Old fears came back, paranoid, racist, disgusting fears. "Your father started wondering, started questioning whether your biological father might have been—" "They started looking at you differently, seeing features they'd never noticed before, convincing themselves of things that aren't even true." I felt sick, physically sick. I rushed to her bathroom and barely made it before I threw up. When I came back, Aunt Patricia was crying. "It's wrong," she said. "It's so wrong, and I told them that. I told your mother she was being ridiculous, that she was letting your father's paranoia destroy your relationship, but she wouldn't listen. She said it was too complicated, too painful. She said she couldn't face walking you down that aisle with everyone wondering, everyone whispering. So she chose her comfort over her daughter," I said flatly. Aunt Patricia couldn't argue with that. I left her house in a daze. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at nothing, trying to process what I'd learned. My entire identity had been built on a lie. The man I'd called Dad for 27 years wasn't my father. My mother had hidden this from me my whole life. And now, my parents were so twisted up in their own guilt and racism that they couldn't even celebrate my happiness. When I finally drove home, Marcus took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. I told him everything. I expected him to be angry, to be hurt by the racism, to maybe even question whether he wanted to marry into such a broken family. Instead, he held my face in his hands and said, "Sarah, I don't care what they think. I don't care about their fears or their guilt or their secrets. I care about you, just you. And nothing is going to stop me from marrying you in 3 months." That night, lying in bed with Marcus's arms around me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I wasn't going to protect their secrets. If they wanted to turn their backs on me, fine. But they were going to face the truth of what they'd done. I was going to expose everything. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize, someone calculating, someone determined, someone who was going to make sure the truth came to light no matter what it cost. I started gathering evidence, not for a court case. This wasn't about legality. This was about exposure, about making sure that everyone who'd abandoned me understood exactly what kind of people they were supporting. First, I compiled a timeline, every memory I could think of from my childhood that suddenly made sense in this new context. The way my father sometimes looked at me with resentment, the way my mother would overcompensate with affection, as if trying to make up for her guilt. The hushed arguments I'd overheard late at night that would stop the moment I appeared, the way certain relatives always seemed uncomfortable around us at family gatherings. I went through old photo albums, scanning pictures and saving them to my laptop. I wanted people to see the happy family facade that had been maintained while I lived in ignorance. I wanted them to see the lie. Then I started recording conversations. I know it sounds extreme, but I needed proof. I needed people to hear in their own words why they were choosing to abandon me. I called my mother first. I kept my voice neutral, professional almost, as I asked her directly about the affair and about why she and my father had really refused to come to the wedding. She panicked. I could hear it in her voice. "Who told you?" "Sarah, who told you about?" "Does it matter?" I asked calmly, even though my hands were shaking as I held the phone. "Is it true? Did you have an affair? Am I not Dad's biological daughter?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Sarah, please," she finally said, her voice breaking. "You have to understand. We were trying to protect you. We thought if you never knew." "Protect me?" I laughed bitterly. "You weren't protecting me, Mom. You were protecting yourself. And now, because you can't face your own guilt, you're destroying the most important day of my life." "That's not fair," she protested. "You don't understand the complexity. Then explain it to me. Explain how your 30-year-old affair has anything to do with my wedding. Explain why Marcus being black somehow makes this worse. Explain how a mother who truly loves her daughter could do what you're doing." She couldn't. She stammered and cried and made excuses, but she couldn't give me a single good reason. When I hung up, I had everything I needed recorded. I did the same with my father. That conversation was shorter but somehow more painful. He was defensive, angry, accusatory. He actually tried to blame me for bringing this up and making everything worse. "You're the one making it worse," I told him coldly. "You're the one who decided to punish me for something I had no control over. You're the one who let your insecurity and your racism destroy our relationship." He hung up on me. But I had that conversation recorded too. Marcus watched all of this with growing concern. "Sarah," he said one evening as I typed up a document outlining everything I'd discovered, "I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me." "Anything," I said, not looking away from my laptop screen. "What's the end goal here? What are you trying to accomplish?" I finally looked at him. "Justice. Truth. I want everyone to know what they did to me." "But then what?" he pressed. "After you expose them, after you tell the world about your parents' secrets and their reasons for not coming to the wedding, then what? Do you get them back? Do you repair the relationship?" "I don't want them back," I said harshly, "not if this is who they really are." "Maybe," Marcus said carefully, "but you're my fiancé and I love you and I need to make sure you're not doing something you'll regret later." "Revenge." "This isn't revenge," I interrupted. "This is accountability. They made choices. They chose to lie to me. They chose to abandon me. They chose to let their racism and their guilt control them. Now they get to face the consequences of those choices. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. Then I'm with you. Whatever you need to do, I'm with you. That's when I knew beyond any doubt that I was marrying the right person. I spent the next 2 weeks crafting what I started calling the truth document. It was 12 pages long, carefully written, with screenshots of text messages, transcripts of phone conversations, and a detailed timeline of events. I included photos from my childhood alongside the story of the affair and the lies that followed. I explained why my parents refused to come to my wedding, making sure to highlight the racial element because that was something people needed to know. I wasn't doing this out of pure spite, though I won't pretend that wasn't part of it. I was doing this because silence had protected them for too long. Secrets had given them power over me for my entire life. And I was done being powerless. My grandmother, my father's mother, called me during this time. She was the only member of my father's side of the family still planning to attend the wedding. "Sarah, sweetheart," she said, her elderly voice gentle but firm, "I've heard rumors about what you're planning to do. I'm just planning to tell the truth, Grandma. The truth can be a weapon, honey. And weapons hurt everyone, including the person wielding them." "They hurt me first," I said quietly. "They've been hurting me my whole life, and I didn't even know it." She sighed. "I'm not defending them. What your parents did, keeping this from you, letting their fears control them, it was wrong. But I want you to be sure you're ready for what comes next. Once you let this out, you can't take it back." "I know," I said. "And I'm ready. Then I'll be right there beside you when you do it," she said firmly. "No matter what happens, you'll have me." I cried after that call. They were the first tears I'd shed in days that weren't from anger or betrayal. They were tears of gratitude for the one person in my family who saw me, truly saw me, and chose to stand with me anyway. 3 weeks before the wedding, I finalized the truth document. It was polished, powerful, and devastating. I read it over one last time, with Marcus sitting beside me on the couch. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. I thought about my mother, who'd lied to me for 27 years. About my father, who'd let his insecurity turn him into someone who couldn't even attend his daughter's wedding. About all the relatives who'd chosen sides without bothering to hear mine. "I'm sure," I said. The next question was how to release it. I considered sending it directly to family members, but that felt too easy. They could ignore it, delete it, pretend they never saw it. I needed something more public. Something that would force everyone to confront the truth. That's when Marcus had an idea that was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. "What if you made it part of the wedding?" he suggested. I stared at him. "What do you mean? What if, at the wedding itself, you told the story? Not just to your family, but to everyone. All our friends, my family, everyone who's going to be there. Make it part of the ceremony. Let everyone know why your parents aren't there and what kind of people chose to abandon you." It was bold, terrifying, unconventional, and exactly what I needed. "We'd have to change the ceremony structure," I said, my mind already racing with possibilities. "We'd have to warn the officiant," Marcus added. "Some people will be uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable," Marcus said firmly. "The truth is uncomfortable." That's the whole point. We spent that evening completely redesigning the wedding ceremony. Instead of a traditional structure, we decided to incorporate a truth-telling section before the vows. I would stand up in front of everyone and tell my story, all of it. The affair, the lies, the abandonment, the racism. Everything. And then I would invite my parents to respond. Right there, in front of everyone, I sent them one final invitation. Not to the wedding as guests, but as participants in this moment of truth. The email was simple. "Mom and Dad, you have refused to attend my wedding because of secrets and fears you've carried for almost 30 years. You have chosen to let those secrets destroy our relationship rather than face them with honesty and courage. I am giving you one final chance. On June 20th, at my wedding, I will tell our story. The affair. The lies. The reasons you've abandoned me. I will tell everyone the truth you've tried to hide. You can be there to face it with me, to answer questions, to show even a shred of accountability. Or you can stay away and prove that your pride is more important than your daughter. The choice is yours. Sarah, I didn't expect them to show up, but I needed to give them the option. I needed to be able to say I'd done everything I could. My mother called 20 minutes after I sent the email. She was hysterical. "You can't do this," she sobbed. "Sarah, please, you can't humiliate us like this. You can't destroy our reputation, our standing in the community." "You destroyed my relationship with my entire family," I said calmly. "You destroyed my sense of identity. You destroyed my trust. And you did it all to protect yourselves from the consequences of your own choices. So yes, Mom, I can do this, and I will," she begged. She threatened. She tried guilt, then anger, then bargaining. But I held firm. When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The decision was made. The plan was set. In 3 weeks, the truth would finally be free. The final 3 weeks before the wedding were surreal. On the surface, everything looked like normal wedding preparation. I had dress fittings, finalized the catering menu, confirmed the flower arrangements. Marcus and I did our final dance lessons and met with the photographer to go over the shot list. But underneath all of that normalcy was this electric current of anticipation and fear. Everyone who knew what I was planning, Marcus, his family, my grandmother, my cousin Lisa, kept asking me if I was sure, if I was really ready to do this. The answer was always yes, but that didn't stop the nightmares. I'd dream about standing up at the ceremony and opening my mouth, only to have no words come out. Or I'd dream about my parents showing up and everyone siding with them, turning against me, leaving me alone at the altar. Or worst of all, I'd dream about going through with the exposure and feeling nothing afterward. No relief, no justice, just emptiness. Marcus held me through those nightmares. He never once told me to back down, but he also made sure I knew I could change my mind at any moment. "This is your wedding day," he said one night as we lay in bed, my head on his chest. "It should be about us, about our love, about the future we're building. If exposing your parents is going to overshadow that, if it's going to make the day about pain instead of joy, then we can find another way." "I've thought about that," I admitted. "And I've realized something. The day is going to be about pain, whether I expose them or not. Because their absence is already a statement. Everyone's going to wonder where they are, why they're not there. There will be whispers and questions and speculation. At least this way, people will know the truth instead of making up stories." He kissed the top of my head. "Then let's make sure we balance it. Let's make sure that after you tell your story, we have something beautiful to come back to. Something that reminds everyone, reminds you, what this day is really about." That conversation led to another change in our ceremony. After my truth-telling section, we decided to include a renewal of commitment ritual. We'd have our closest friends and Marcus's family members each share one thing they loved about our relationship, one reason they believed in our future together. It would shift the energy from pain to love, from past to future. We also decided to include a symbolic gesture, a unity painting. During the reception, Marcus and I would create a piece of art together on canvas, using our hands to blend colors. It would be messy and imperfect and beautiful, a visual representation of building something new together. Meanwhile, the family drama continued to escalate. Word had gotten out about what I was planning, and various relatives started reaching out. Some tried to dissuade me. Others tried to broker peace. A few actually apologized, though their apologies felt hollow and too late. My Uncle Robert called and spent 20 minutes trying to convince me that family business should stay in the family. I asked him why he hadn't applied that principle when he'd declined my wedding invitation based on my parents' lies. He had no answer. Aunt Jennifer sent a long email about forgiveness and mercy and how I was becoming the villain in my own story. I wrote back a single sentence: "I'm not the one who lied for 27 years." The most surprising contact came from my father's brother, Uncle Tom, who I hadn't heard from in over a decade. He called 3 days before the wedding. "Sarah," he said, his voice gruff and uncomfortable, "I don't know if you remember me very well. We haven't stayed in touch like we should have." "I remember you, Uncle Tom," I said cautiously. "I heard what you're planning to do at your wedding, and I need to tell you something before you do it." My heart started racing. What? Your father, Michael? He's not a bad man, but he's a proud man, and pride makes people do terrible things. When he found out about the affair, when he learned you weren't his biological daughter, it broke something in him. Not his love for you, never that, but his sense of himself. His masculinity, his place in the world. That's not my fault, I said firmly. No, it's not, Uncle Tom agreed. But it became your burden anyway, and that's not fair. I should have said something years ago. I should have told him he was being a fool, letting his pain turn him into someone who'd abandon his own daughter, biological or not. I should have stood up for you. Why didn't you? I asked, genuinely curious. Same reason nobody did, he said sadly. Because family silence is easier than family conflict. Because keeping the peace felt more important than doing what's right. But I'm calling now to tell you that I support what you're doing. Not because I enjoy seeing my brother humiliated, but because sometimes the only way to heal a wound is to cut away the infection. And this family has been infected with lies for too long. I cried after that call, not from sadness, but from validation. From knowing that at least one person understood why this mattered. 2 days before the wedding, my mother made one final attempt to stop me. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, her eyes red from crying, her hair disheveled in a way I'd never seen before. My mother had always been immaculately put together, makeup perfect, hair styled, clothes pressed. Seeing her like this was jarring. "Sarah, please," she said the moment I opened the door. "Please, we need to talk." I almost closed the door in her face, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the desperate look in her eyes. Maybe it was the small, childish part of me that still wanted my mother to make everything okay. I let her in. We sat across from each other in my living room, the same living room where Marcus and I had sealed those wedding invitations just 3 months ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. "I made a mistake," my mother began, her hands twisting in her lap. "A terrible mistake 28 years ago. I had an affair with a man from my office. I was young, confused, unhappy in my marriage. Not that those are excuses. They're not. What I did was wrong. I know all of this already," I said flatly. "But you don't know everything," she continued. "You don't know that when I found out I was pregnant, I ended the affair immediately. I confessed to your father. I begged for forgiveness, and I promised him. I promised that we would raise you as our own, that you would never know, that we would be a normal, happy family. Except you weren't," I said. "You couldn't be, because you built everything on a lie." "We tried," she whispered. "God, Sarah, we tried so hard. And for years, it worked. I loved you. Your father loved you. You were our daughter in every way that mattered. But then I fell in love with Marcus," I finished. And suddenly all those old fears came back. She nodded miserably. "When you introduced us to Marcus, when I saw how serious you were about him, your father started asking questions. Started wondering about your biological father, about whether there were features in you that didn't come from either of us. It was paranoid and racist and completely irrational, but you let it control you," I interrupted. "You let his paranoia become your excuse for not supporting me." "I was trying to hold my marriage together," she exclaimed, "trying to keep your father from falling apart. He was convinced that attending your wedding would be like publicly admitting the affair, like facing everyone we'd lied to for almost 30 years. He couldn't do it. And I chose him over you." The admission hung in the air between us. "You chose him over me," I repeated slowly. "You chose protecting your image, protecting your marriage, protecting your comfort. Over your daughter." "Yes," she whispered. "And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But not enough to change it," I said. "Not enough to come to my wedding. You're here trying to stop me from telling the truth, but you're not here trying to make things right." She started crying harder. "I can't make things right, Sarah. I can't undo 27 years of lies. I can't make your father someone he's not. I can't fix this. All I can do is beg you not to destroy what's left of this family." "You destroyed it," I said, standing up. "Not me. You, with your lies and your cowardice. And now you want me to be complicit in that destruction by staying silent. But I won't. I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your own choices. Please, she sobbed, reaching for me. Sarah, please. I'm your mother. No, I said coldly, stepping back from her outstretched hand. A mother shows up for her daughter. A mother tells the truth. A mother chooses her child over her own comfort. You're just the woman who gave birth to me and then spent my entire life lying to my face. I asked her to leave. She begged for another 10 minutes, but I held firm. Finally, she left, and I collapsed on my couch, shaking from adrenaline and grief. Marcus came home an hour later to find me still sitting there, staring at nothing. She came, I said simply. He sat beside me and pulled me into his arms. We didn't talk about it. There was nothing to say. The die was cast. In 48 hours, the truth would be revealed, and nothing would ever be the same. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I got up around 2 in the morning and went to the kitchen, where I found the printed copy of the truth document sitting on the counter. I'd read it so many times that I nearly had it memorized, but I read it again anyway, making sure every word was exactly right. Marcus found me there at 3:30, still reading by the light of the refrigerator. Second thoughts? He asked gently. No, I said. Just final thoughts. Making sure I'm ready. He took the pages from my hands and set them aside, then took both my hands in his. Sarah Mitchell, tomorrow you become Sarah Thompson. Tomorrow, we start our life together. Whatever happens with your family, whatever comes from telling the truth, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this. You will never be alone in this. I kissed him, tasting salt from tears I hadn't realized I was crying. I love you, I whispered. I love you too, he said. Now come to bed. You need to be well rested for tomorrow. You're going to shake the world. I slept fitfully for the few hours remaining before dawn. When I woke up, it was June 20th. My wedding day. The day I would finally tell the truth. The morning of June 20th dawned clear and beautiful. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the bridal suite at the venue, catching the delicate beading on my wedding dress and making it shimmer like captured starlight. Under different circumstances, it would have been perfect, a fairy tale. But fairy tales don't usually involve exposing family secrets in front of 150 guests. My grandmother arrived first, carrying a small box wrapped in silver paper. She looked elegant in her navy dress, her silver hair styled beautifully, but her eyes were worried. How are you holding up, sweetheart? She asked, settling into the chair beside my vanity. Honestly, I met her gaze in the mirror as my friend Rachel worked on my makeup. I'm terrified. And ready. And angry. And sad. All at the same time. She reached over and squeezed my hand. That's normal. You're about to do something incredibly brave and incredibly difficult. But Sarah, I need you to know something before you walk down that aisle. I turned to face her directly. What? Whatever happens today, whatever the fallout is from what you're about to reveal, you're going to be okay. You're stronger than you know, and you're surrounded by people who love you for exactly who you are. Not who they thought you were, not who they wanted you to be, but who you actually are. I felt tears threatening and had to blink hard to keep them from ruining Rachel's work. Did you bring waterproof mascara? I asked Rachel, trying to lighten the moment. Obviously, she said, rolling her eyes. I know you. I came prepared for tears. Marcus's sister Emily arrived next, followed by my cousin Lisa, and then the rest of my bridesmaids. The suite filled with nervous energy. Everyone knew what was coming, and I could feel their protective presence surrounding me like armor. Emily helped me into my dress, a simple but elegant A-line gown with lace sleeves and a flowing train. It was exactly what I'd wanted, classic, timeless, and powerful. As she buttoned the back, she whispered, "You look like a warrior queen." "That's the goal," I whispered back. There was a knock on the door, and my heart stopped. For one wild moment, I thought it might be my parents, that they'd changed their minds, that somehow everything would be okay. But it was just the wedding coordinator, letting us know we had 30 minutes until the ceremony began. 30 minutes until I changed everything. I spent those minutes in quiet reflection. My bridesmaids bustled around me, checking final details, but I barely noticed. I was thinking about the journey that had brought me here. 27 years of living in a lie. 3 months of unraveling the truth. And now, one moment that would define the rest of my life. Rachel handed me my bouquet white roses mixed with blue delphiniums, my something blue. "Ready?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath. Ready. The processional began. Through the door to the bridal suite, I could hear the music starting. My bridesmaids lined up, and one by one, they walked out to take their places. Finally, it was just me and my grandmother. "I'm supposed to be walked down the aisle by my father," I said quietly. "That's tradition." "Tradition is overrated," my grandmother said firmly, offering me her arm. "Besides," I raised that boy, "if he's too foolish to be here today, at least you have the woman who taught him better." I laughed, despite everything, and looped my arm through hers. We walked to the entrance of the ceremony space, and I got my first glimpse of what awaited me. The venue was breathtaking. The ceremony was being held in the garden, with rows of white chairs arranged in a semicircle facing a flower-adorned arch. Beyond that, the lake sparkled in the afternoon sunlight. White and blue flowers were everywhere, and strings of lights had been hung overhead, ready to create magic once the sun set for the reception. But what struck me most were the people. 150 faces turned toward me as the wedding march began. Some were smiling, some were curious, some looked vaguely uncomfortable, probably those who'd heard rumors about what I was planning. And there, standing at the altar in his perfectly tailored navy suit, was Marcus. When our eyes met, he smiled, and for a moment, everything else fell away. The lies, the betrayal, the pain, none of it mattered as much as that smile and what it represented: love, truth, partnership. My grandmother walked me down the aisle slowly, giving me time to take it all in. I saw Marcus's parents in the front row, beaming. I saw our friends scattered throughout the audience, their expressions supportive and proud. I saw empty seats where my family should have been, and felt a sharp pang that I forced myself to push aside. When we reached the arch, my grandmother kissed my cheek and whispered, "Make them hear you," before taking her seat. Marcus took my hands, and the officiant, a kind woman named Reverend Martinez, who we'd carefully briefed on what was about to happen, began. "Friends and family," she said, her voice warm but with an underlying strength, "we are gathered here today to witness the marriage of Marcus Thompson and Sarah Mitchell. But before we proceed to the traditional vows, Sarah has asked to share something important with all of you. This is unconventional, yes, but marriage itself is about breaking conventions and creating something new together." She stepped aside, giving me the space. I handed my bouquet to Rachel and turned to face the audience. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was it. I took a deep breath and began. "Thank you all for being here," I started, my voice shaking slightly but growing stronger with each word. "For those of you who don't know me well, I'm Sarah. And like Reverend Martinez said, I'm about to do something unconventional. But I think you'll understand why it's necessary." I paused, looking out at the faces before me. Some people were leaning forward, intrigued. Others looked nervous. I found my grandmother's face in the front row and drew strength from her encouraging nod. When I sent out the invitations to this wedding 3 months ago, I expected to see certain people here today. My parents, for instance. My aunts and uncles, my cousins. Most of my father's side of the family. But if you look around, you'll notice that those seats are empty. A murmur ran through the crowd. People were definitely looking now, noticing the gaps. For the past 3 months, I've been asking myself why. Why would my own parents refuse to attend my wedding? Why would so much of my family turn their backs on me during what should be the happiest day of my life? What could possibly be so terrible that it would justify this kind of abandonment? I took another breath. Marcus gave me a small nod of encouragement from where he stood beside me. The answer, I discovered, starts with a lie. A lie that began 28 years ago and has shaped my entire existence without my knowledge. And then I told them everything. I told them about my mother's affair, about how the man I'd called Dad my entire life wasn't my biological father, about how I'd been lied to for 27 years. I kept my voice steady and factual, resisting the urge to let emotion overtake the narrative. Now, you might be thinking, why does this ancient affair matter now? Why would it impact my wedding? I continued. That's exactly what I asked when I first found out. And the answer? The answer is what made me decide to stand here and tell you all this story. I paused for effect, watching as people exchanged glances, clearly invested now. When I introduced my parents to Marcus 3 years ago, something shifted. They started pulling away. They became distant. And when I told them we were getting engaged, I felt their disapproval, though they never said it directly, but I didn't understand why until I dug deeper. I looked at Marcus, whose expression was neutral but supportive. We discussed how much to say about the racial element, and we'd agreed that the truth needed to be told completely, no matter how ugly it was. My parents, it turns out, have been consumed by a paranoid, racist fear. Because Marcus is black, they started wondering, questioning, obsessing over whether my biological father might have been black. They started looking at me differently, searching for features that might explain why I was dating Marcus. As if love needed an explanation. As if I couldn't simply be attracted to a wonderful man who happens to have a different skin color than the family that raised me. The murmur in the crowd was louder now. Some people looked shocked, others angry. A few of Marcus's relatives in the front rows had tears in their eyes. My parents' guilt and lies mixed with their prejudice and fear, and the result was them choosing not to attend my wedding. Not because Marcus isn't good enough. He's brilliant, successful, kind, and loves me unconditionally. Not because we're not ready. We've built a strong relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. No, they're not here because they're more committed to protecting their secrets and their prejudices than they are to supporting their daughter. I felt my voice starting to crack and paused to collect myself. Rachel had been right about the waterproof mascara. I debated whether to share this with all of you. Part of me wanted to pretend everything was fine, to let people assume my parents were sick or traveling or had some legitimate excuse. But I realized that staying silent would just be continuing the pattern of lies that has defined my relationship with them. And I refused to start my marriage with lies. I turned to look at Marcus, and he reached out to take my hand. Marcus knows everything I just told you. I told him the truth the moment I discovered it because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them with the broken parts of yourself. You let them see the messy, complicated, painful truth. And they stay anyway. They love you anyway. Marcus squeezed my hand, and I saw several people in the audience wiping their eyes. So I'm standing here today, in front of all of you, to say this. I am Sarah Mitchell. I am the daughter of a woman who made a mistake 28 years ago. I am the daughter of a man who raised me for 27 years, but couldn't overcome his own insecurity. I am also the product of some unknown biological father whose identity may remain a mystery forever. But most importantly, I am a woman who refuses to be defined by other people's lies. I am a woman who has chosen to build a life with someone who sees the truth of who I am and loves me for it. I released Marcus's hand and addressed the audience again. I sent my parents one final invitation, not just to the wedding, but to this moment. I gave them the chance to be here, to face the truth with me, to show even a shred of accountability for the pain they've caused. They chose not to come. That's their decision, and they'll have to live with it. But here's what I want all of you to know. Their absence doesn't diminish this day. Their lies don't define my worth. Their fear doesn't limit my future, because I am surrounded by people who have shown up for me, who have celebrated with me, who believe in the life Marcus and I are building together. I looked around at the faces in the audience, friends who'd supported me through this difficult time, Marcus's family who'd welcomed me with open arms, my grandmother who'd never wavered, and the few family members who'd had the courage to attend despite the pressure not to. To everyone here, thank you for witnessing this truth. Thank you for being part of this day. And thank you for understanding that sometimes healing requires exposing the wound. I'm done carrying other people's secrets. I'm done protecting people who won't protect me. From this moment forward, I'm living in truth. I turned back to Reverend Martinez and nodded. Now I'm ready to get married. The audience erupted. Some people were crying. Others were applauding. A few looked shocked, probably still processing everything I'd revealed. But the energy had shifted. The air felt clearer, lighter, like a storm had finally passed. Reverend Martinez stepped forward, her own eyes glistening. "Sarah, that took tremendous courage. And now, let's proceed with the ceremony that celebrates the love and truth you and Marcus have built together." But before she could continue, something happened that I hadn't anticipated. From the back of the ceremony space, I heard a commotion. Chairs scraping, voices raised. And then, walking down the aisle with tears streaming down her face, was my mother. She'd come after all. Everything stopped. The audience fell completely silent as my mother made her way down the aisle. She was wearing a simple gray dress, not the elegant mother of the bride outfit I'm sure she'd once picked out. Her makeup was smudged from crying, and she looked smaller somehow, diminished. My father was not with her. She stopped about halfway down the aisle as if unsure whether to come closer. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the space filled with flowers and witnesses and the weight of 27 years of lies. "Sarah," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying in the shocked silence. "I couldn't let you do this. I couldn't let you get married thinking I didn't care." "You refused to come," I said, and my voice came out harder than I'd intended, amplified by the venue's natural acoustics so everyone could hear. "You made your choice." "I made the wrong choice," she said, taking a tentative step forward. "I've been making wrong choices for 28 years. But I'm here now. Please. Let me say what I should have said months ago." Reverend Martinez looked at me questioningly. This definitely wasn't in the plan. I looked at Marcus, who gave me a subtle nod that said, "Your call." Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, to say it was too late, that showing up now didn't erase 3 months of abandonment and 27 years of lies. But another part of me, the part that was still, despite everything, that little girl who'd climbed trees in her yard, needed to hear what she had to say. "Fine," I said. Say it in front of everyone so there are no more secrets." My mother took another shaky breath and walked closer, stopping at the edge of the altar area. She turned slightly so she could address both me and the audience. "My name is Elizabeth Mitchell," she began, "and everything Sarah just told you is true. 28 years ago, I had an affair. I got pregnant and I lied to my husband about it for months before finally confessing. When Sarah was born, we made a decision I thought was merciful at the time, to raise her as our own and never tell her the truth about her parentage." She paused, wiping tears from her face with shaking hands. "For years, I convinced myself we'd made the right choice. That we were protecting Sarah from pain, from confusion, from the stigma of being different. But the truth is, we were protecting ourselves. From judgment, from embarrassment, from having to face the consequences of my infidelity." Some people in the audience were nodding. Others still looked shocked. My grandmother's face was inscrutable. "When Sarah introduced us to Marcus," my mother continued, her voice breaking, "my husband's insecurity and my guilt came flooding back. He started questioning everything. Started looking for answers where there were none. And instead of standing up to him, instead of choosing my daughter, I chose the easier path. I chose the lie. I chose the man who raised Sarah but couldn't overcome his own demons over the daughter I'd brought into this world." She turned to face me fully now. "Sarah, I can't take back what I've done. I can't give you back the years of truth you deserved. I can't undo the pain I've caused by refusing to support your wedding. But I can stand here now and say that I was wrong. Completely, utterly, inexcusably wrong." "Where's Dad?" I asked, and the word felt strange in my mouth now. "If you're so sorry, where is he?" My mother's face crumpled. He couldn't come. He's still too proud, too angry. He said coming here would be admitting defeat, admitting he was wrong in front of everyone who knows us. I told him that pride wasn't worth losing you, but he wouldn't listen." "So you came alone," I said slowly. "You came without him. I came for you," she said firmly. "I came because you're my daughter. Because I carried you for 9 months, and I held you when you were born, and I was there for your first steps and your first words and every important moment of your life. And I wasn't going to miss this one. Not anymore, even if it means facing everyone's judgment. Even if it means your father may never forgive me." The audience was completely transfixed. This was better drama than any TV show. You said you came because I'm your daughter, I said, and my voice was cold. But you've spent my entire life treating me like a secret to be managed, like a reminder of your mistakes. How am I supposed to believe that's changed just because you showed up at the last minute? You're not, she admitted. You have no reason to believe me, no reason to trust me. I've proven over and over that I put my own comfort ahead of your happiness. But Sarah, I swear to you, from this moment forward, things will be different. I will fight for you. I will stand up for you. I will be the mother you deserved all along. Words are easy, I said. Showing up for one ceremony doesn't undo 27 years of lies. I know, she whispered. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn your forgiveness. But please, please don't shut me out completely. Let me try to make this right. I stood there, torn between anger and that desperate, childish hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be a turning point. Marcus moved closer to me, his presence a reminder that whatever I decided, I wasn't alone. You hurt me, I said finally, and my voice broke on the words. You hurt me in ways I'm still trying to understand. And right now, I don't know if I can forgive that. I understand, my mother said, but I took a shaky breath. But you're here. You came. You're facing this. That's more than I expected, and it's something. Hope flickered across her face. I'm not saying everything is okay, I continued quickly. I'm not saying we can just go back to how things were, because how things were was built on lies. But maybe we can try to build something new, something honest. After today, after I've had time to process all of this, maybe we can talk, really talk. My mother started crying harder, nodding frantically. Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah, thank you. I looked at Reverend Martinez. Can we continue with the ceremony now? She smiled warmly. Of course. Elizabeth, would you like to take a seat? My mother looked at the empty chairs in the front row, the seats reserved for parents of the bride, and hesitated. May I? She asked me softly. May I sit there, or would you prefer? Sit, I said. It wasn't quite forgiveness, but it was permission. It was acknowledgement. She walked to the front row and sat beside my grandmother, who reached over and took her hand. My grandmother, who had every right to be angry at her daughter-in-law for hurting me, chose in that moment to offer comfort. It made me start crying all over again. Okay, I said, turning to Marcus and taking both his hands. Now I'm really ready to get married. The audience laughed, a release of tension that had been building throughout this entire unexpected drama. Marcus squeezed my hands and whispered, You're amazing, you know that? Reverend Martinez cleared her throat and began again. As I was saying before, this beautiful, unexpected moment of truth and reconciliation, we are here to witness the marriage of Marcus and Sarah. Before we hear their vows, we've arranged for something special. Several of their loved ones have prepared statements about their relationship. Marcus's mother stood up first. She was an elegant woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. When Marcus first told me about Sarah, she began, he said, Mom, I've met someone who challenges me, inspires me, and makes me want to be better every single day. And I thought, oh no, he's really fallen. But when I met Sarah, I understood. This woman standing here has more strength and courage in her little finger than most people have in their entire body. What she just did, standing up here and sharing her truth, facing her pain publicly, that takes incredible bravery. Marcus, you're a lucky man. Sarah, welcome to our family. We love you. Marcus's sister Emily went next, talking about how our love was evident in the small moments, the way we looked at each other, the way we supported each other's dreams, the way we never tried to change each other but instead helped each other grow. One by one, friends stood and shared memories, stories, observations about our relationship. With each statement, the energy of the ceremony shifted further from pain and confrontation to celebration and love. By the time the last person sat down, I felt wrapped in warmth and support. Now, Reverend Martinez said with a smile, the vows. Marcus, would you like to begin? Marcus took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Sarah, when I met you 3 years ago, I thought I knew what love was. I thought it was romance and attraction and compatibility, but you've taught me that love is so much more than that. Love is choosing to be vulnerable. Love is sharing your truth even when it's terrifying. Love is standing beside someone when the whole world seems to be against them. Love is being brave enough to demand the respect and honesty you deserve. He paused, squeezing my hands tighter. Today you showed everyone here what it means to live in truth. You showed them courage and strength and integrity. And I am so honored, so incredibly honored, that you've chosen to build a life with me. I promise to always be honest with you. I promise to stand beside you no matter what challenges come. I promise to love you not just on the beautiful days, but especially on the difficult ones. I promise to be your partner, your supporter, your best friend, and your safe place. Today and every day I choose you. I was crying again, but these were different tears. These were tears of joy and relief and overwhelming love. When it was my turn, I looked into Marcus's eyes and spoke from my heart. Marcus, 3 months ago, I thought my world was falling apart. I thought the people who were supposed to love me had abandoned me. I thought I'd have to face this day missing half of my family. But what I learned is that family isn't just about blood or obligation. Family is about showing up. It's about choosing each other over and over again, especially when things get hard. I glanced quickly at my mother in the front row, then back to Marcus. You've shown up for me every single day since we met. You've celebrated my successes and held me through my failures. You've let me be messy and complicated and sometimes difficult, and you've never asked me to be anything other than exactly who I am. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, the freedom to be authentically myself. I took a shaking breath. So I promise to give you that same gift. I promise to support your dreams, even when they scare me. I promise to be honest with you, even when the truth is hard. I promise to choose you every single day in big ways and small ways. I promise to be your partner in building a life based on truth, respect, and unconditional love. You've seen me at my worst these past 3 months, and you've loved me through it. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you what I'm like at my best. Reverend Martinez asked for the rings, which Marcus's best friend Tyler brought forward. We exchanged them, each repeating traditional vows that felt weighted with extra meaning after everything that had been said. By the power vested in me, Reverend Martinez finally announced, her voice warm with emotion, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Marcus, you may kiss your bride. And he did. Marcus pulled me close and kissed me deeply while the audience erupted in applause and cheers. When we finally broke apart, both of us were crying and laughing at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Martinez said over the noise, may I present, for the first time, Mr. Marcus Thompson and Mrs. Zepper. Sarah Thompson. We walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, while our loved ones cheered. As we passed the front row, I made eye contact with my mother. She was crying and smiling at the same time, her expression a mixture of grief and hope. I gave her a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation. But it was acknowledgement. It was a door left open, instead of slammed shut. And for now, that was enough. The reception was held in the same venue, just inside the beautiful hall with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. As Marcus and I walked in for our grand entrance, I felt like I was floating. The ceremony had been cathartic, exhausting, and somehow perfect in its imperfect way. Our first dance was to 1,000 Years by Christina Perri. Marcus held me close as we swayed, and he whispered in my ear, "You did it." "You really did it." "We did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Well, technically, I just had to stand there and look pretty," he joked, making me laugh. As the song ended and other couples joined us on the dance floor, I noticed my mother standing at the edge of the room, watching. She looked lost, uncertain of whether she belonged in this space or not. Marcus noticed where I was looking. "Do you want to talk to her?" "Not yet," I said honestly. I need to just be happy for a while. To celebrate this day without thinking about all the complicated family drama. "Then that's what we'll do," he said firmly, spinning me around and making me laugh again. The reception unfolded like a dream. The food was delicious, the speeches were heartfelt and funny, and the energy in the room was electric. People kept coming up to me, telling me how brave I'd been during the ceremony. Some shared their own stories of family secrets and complicated relationships. It felt like my truth-telling had given others permission to acknowledge their own difficult experiences. Marcus's father gave a toast that made everyone cry. When my son told me he wanted to marry Sarah, he said, "I knew she must be special." But I had no idea just how special until today. Sarah, you've shown us all what it means to stand in your truth, to demand respect, and to build a life based on honesty. Our family is better for having you in it. My grandmother gave a toast next, and hers was shorter but equally powerful. Sarah has always been strong, she said simply. Even as a little girl, she knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to fight for it. Today, she fought for her truth and for her right to be loved exactly as she is. I couldn't be prouder. As dinner concluded, it was time for the unity painting ceremony that Marcus and I had planned. A large blank canvas had been set up on an easel, surrounded by paints in our wedding colors: blues, whites, golds, and silvers. Reverend Martinez, who'd stayed for the reception, explained the ritual to the guests. Marcus and Sarah will now create art together, using their hands to blend colors on this canvas. It symbolizes how they'll blend their lives, their experiences, their dreams into something new and beautiful, something that belongs to both of them equally. Marcus and I rolled up our sleeves and dipped our hands in paint. At first, we were careful, creating deliberate patterns and shapes, but then Marcus got a mischievous look in his eye and flicked some blue paint at me. I gasped in mock outrage. "Oh, you did not just—" "I absolutely did," he said with a grin and flicked more paint. Soon we were both laughing like children, painting not just the canvas but each other, creating a joyful mess that perfectly captured what marriage really is: messy, imperfect, surprising, and beautiful. When we finally stepped back, the canvas was covered in swirls and handprints and chaotic beauty. It would dry into something we could hang in our home, a reminder of this day and the truth we'd committed to building our life upon. As the night went on and the dancing continued, I found myself stepping outside for air. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The reception continued inside, but out here it was quiet. Peaceful. I wasn't alone for long. "Sarah?" I turned to find my mother standing a few feet away, still in that simple gray dress, looking uncertain. "Mom," I acknowledged. "I don't want to intrude on your evening," she said quickly. I wanted to thank you for letting me stay, for not throwing me out after what I did." I studied her face in the fading light. She looked older than I remembered, tired and worn in a way I'd never noticed before. Maybe the lies had weighed on her too all these years. "You came," I said finally. That's not nothing. It's not nearly enough," she replied. "I know that. But I want you to know I meant everything I said during the ceremony. I want to build something honest with you, something real. Even if it takes years, even if you're never able to fully forgive me. I don't know what the future looks like for us," I said honestly. "I don't know if we can have the mother-daughter relationship I thought we had, because that was based on lies. But maybe we can build something new, something true. Like that painting in there." I gestured to the reception hall. "It won't look like what we expected, but maybe it can still be beautiful." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'd like that. I'd like to try." We stood there in silence for a moment, watching the sunset. Finally I said, "What about Dad? What happens with him?" Her expression hardened slightly. "Your father and I have a lot to work through. I told him tonight that I was coming here, that I was going to support you no matter what he said." We had a significant argument. "I don't know where things stand with us right now. I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want to be the reason for their marriage falling apart. "Don't be," she said firmly. "Whatever happens between your father and me is the result of choices we made 28 years ago, not choices you made today. We created this mess. We have to deal with the consequences." Marcus appeared at the door then. "Sarah? They're about to cut the cake." I looked at my mother. "Would you like to come inside for the cake cutting?" She looked surprised, then hopeful. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said, and I was. This was my wedding day, and while it hadn't gone the way I'd originally planned, it had been true, real, important, and having my mother there for at least part of it felt right. We walked inside together, and I felt some of the tension in the room shift. People had been watching my mother all evening, unsure how to interact with her after the revelations during the ceremony. But seeing us together, seeing that tentative piece, seemed to give people permission to relax slightly. Marcus and I cut the cake, a beautiful 3-tier creation with blue flowers cascading down the sides. We fed each other pieces carefully, no smashing it in each other's faces, despite Tyler's encouragement, and the room erupted in applause and laughter. As the night wore on, more people approached my mother. Some were curious, some were supportive, some were coldly polite, but she handled it all with more grace than I'd expected. She didn't make excuses or try to minimize what she'd done. She simply acknowledged her mistakes and expressed her hope to make things right. Around 11 o'clock, as the party was winding down, my mother approached me one final time. "I'm going to head out," she said. "Let you enjoy the rest of your evening without worrying about me." "Okay," I said. She hesitated, then asked tentatively, Could I call you next week? Maybe we could have coffee." Talk? I thought about it. A week ago, I would have said no immediately. But standing here now, after everything that had happened today, I found myself nodding. "Okay. Coffee. But Mom, I know," she interrupted gently. "Rebuilding trust takes time. I'm not expecting everything to be fixed with one conversation. I'm just grateful you're willing to try." She kissed my cheek, the first physical affection she'd shown me in months, and left. I watched her go, feeling a complicated mixture of emotions. Anger and hope. Hurt and healing. It was going to be a long journey, I knew. There would be difficult conversations, setbacks, moments where I wondered if it was worth it. But at least now we had a foundation of truth to build on. That was more than we'd had before. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind. "How are you doing? Honestly? I'm exhausted, emotionally wrung out. But also, good. Really good. Is that weird?" "Not even a little bit," he assured me. "You faced your demons today. You stood in your truth. And now you get to move forward without carrying those secrets anymore." "We get to move forward," I corrected, turning in his arms to face him. Together, he agreed and kissed me softly. The last few guests trickled out over the next hour. My grandmother was one of the last to leave, and she pulled me aside before she went. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," she said. "What you did today took more courage than most people will ever have to summon in their entire lives. I learned from you," I told her. "You've always been the strongest person I know." "Then you're going to be just fine," she said with a smile. "You and that wonderful husband of yours are going to build an amazing life together." Finally, it was just Marcus and me, standing in the empty reception hall surrounded by the remains of our wedding celebration. We were both tired, our feet hurt from dancing, and we probably had paint in places paint should never be, but we were happy. "Ready to start our honeymoon?" Marcus asked, offering his arm. "Almost," I said. I walked over to the unity painting we created, now dry enough to touch. I traced my fingers over the chaotic swirls of color, the handprints we'd left, the evidence of our joy and playfulness. "This," I said, "this is what I want our marriage to be, honest, messy, colorful, and uniquely ours. Not perfect, but real." "Then that's exactly what will make it," Marcus promised. We left the venue hand in hand, stepping into our future as husband and wife. Behind us were lies and secrets finally exposed. Ahead of us was the unknown, with all its challenges and possibilities. But we would face it together, built on a foundation of truth, and that made all the difference. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Greece islands, beaches, ancient ruins, and food that made us want to move there permanently. For those 2 weeks, I barely thought about the wedding drama. Marcus and I were wrapped up in each other, in exploration and adventure and the simple joy of being newlyweds. But reality was waiting when we returned. We came home to an inbox full of emails and a voicemail box that was completely full. Most messages were supportive friends and acquaintances telling me how brave I'd been, how my story had resonated with them. But there were others. Messages from distant relatives who were angry about the family drama I'd created. Messages from my father's friends defending him and calling me ungrateful. even a few messages from strangers who'd somehow heard about the wedding and felt compelled to share their opinions. Marcus and I spent an entire evening going through them all, deciding which deserved responses and which should just be deleted. "Listen to this one," I said, reading from an email from my Uncle Robert. "Dear Sarah, while I understand you felt hurt by your parents' decision, I think the way you handled things at your wedding was inappropriate and cruel. Family matters should be handled privately, not used as entertainment for guests. You've damaged your parents' reputation in the community, and I hope you're prepared to live with those consequences." Marcus looked up from his own laptop. "What did you tell him?" "I haven't responded yet," I said. Part of me wants to write back and explain that family matters were handled privately for 27 years, and that's exactly what created this mess. But the other part of me just wants to delete it and move on. "Then delete it and move on," Marcus said simply. "You don't owe him an explanation. You told your truth. How other people react to that truth is their issue, not yours." He was right, of course. I deleted the email. But not all the fallout was negative. 3 of my cousins' ones who had initially declined the wedding invitation sent apology emails. They admitted they'd been pressured by their parents to stay away, and that after hearing what had really happened, word had spread quickly through the family. They regretted not standing by me. Aunt Patricia, who'd first told me about the affair, sent a long email telling me how proud she was. "You did what I should have done years ago," she wrote. "You refused to keep carrying someone else's secrets." The family needed to hear the truth, even if they didn't want to. Most surprisingly, I got an email from my father's younger sister, Aunt Caroline, who I'd barely known growing up. She lived in California and had always been somewhat estranged from the family. Her email said, "Dear Sarah, I attended your wedding remotely through a friend who was there. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to reach out because I think you should know something about your father that might help you understand, even if it doesn't excuse his behavior. When your father was growing up, our dad was extremely harsh about masculinity and what it meant to be a real man. Any perceived weakness or failure was met with cruelty. When your father found out about your mother's affair and your parentage, it wasn't just about you or your mother. It triggered decades of his own insecurity and feelings of inadequacy. None of this makes what he did right, but it might help explain why he's been unable to move past it. Some people never heal from their childhood wounds. They just pass the pain along to the next generation. I hope you and your father can eventually find peace with each other, even if that peace doesn't look like the relationship you once had." I cried reading that email, not because it excused my father's behavior, but because it humanized him. It reminded me that he was broken too, just in different ways. That night, Marcus and I talked for hours about family, trauma, and the choice to heal versus the choice to perpetuate pain. "Your father made his choices," Marcus said, "and they hurt you deeply. But you've made different choices. You've chosen truth over comfort, healing over hiding. That's what breaks the cycle." "I just wish," I started, then stopped. "What?" Marcus prompted gently. "I just wish it didn't have to be this hard. I wish I could have had a normal wedding with my parents there, happy and supportive. I wish none of this had ever happened." "But if none of it had happened," Marcus pointed out, "you'd still be living in a lie. You'd be building our marriage on the same foundation of deception that your parents built theirs on." "Yeah, the truth was painful, but now you're free of it." He was right. I knew he was right, but that didn't make it hurt any less. A week after we returned from our honeymoon, I met my mother for coffee as promised. We chose a neutral location, a small cafe neither of us had been to before. When I arrived, she was already there, looking nervous and stirring a cup of tea that had probably gone cold. "Hi," I said, sitting across from her. "Hi," she replied. "Thank you for coming." "I wasn't sure you would." "I said I would," I reminded her. "I'm trying to keep my promises, even when they're difficult." The implication wasn't subtle. She flinched slightly but nodded. "You're right. I haven't been good at that." We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Finally, I said, "So, here we are. Where do we start?" "I've been seeing a therapist," she said suddenly. "Since the wedding. Actually, since the day before the wedding, when I finally decided to come. I knew I needed help understanding why I'd made such terrible choices." That's good," I said, genuinely surprised. I'm glad you're doing that. She's helping me understand a lot of things, my mother continued, about guilt and shame and how I've been letting those emotions control my decisions for decades. About how keeping secrets didn't protect anyone, it just poisoned everything. What about Dad? I asked. Is he seeing anyone? Her expression darkened. Your father and I are separated. I felt like I'd been punched. What? After the wedding, after I came home and told him I'd been there, we had the biggest fight of our marriage. He said I'd betrayed him. I told him that I'd been betraying you for 27 years and I was done. Things were said that can't be unsaid. She looked down at her cold tea. I don't know if we'll reconcile. Right now, we're living apart. He's staying at his brother's place. We're trying to figure out what our future looks like, or if we even have one. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Don't be, she said firmly. This is 28 years of consequences catching up with us. It's not your fault, it's ours. We talked for 2 hours that day. She told me more about the affair, not graphic details, but the emotional context. She'd been young, unhappy, feeling trapped in a marriage that hadn't turned out how she'd hoped. She'd made a terrible choice, and then compounded that choice with years of lies. I told her about the pain of discovering the truth, the betrayal of realizing my entire childhood had been built on deception. The confusion of not knowing who my biological father was or if he even knew I existed. I've tried to find him, she admitted quietly. Your biological father. After the wedding, after I started therapy, I started looking. But it was so long ago, and he moved away before I even knew I was pregnant. I don't know if I'll ever find him. Would you tell me if you did? I asked. Yes, she said without hesitation. No more secrets, Sarah. I promise you, no more lies. It wasn't healing. Not yet, but it was honest. And honesty was a start. Over the next few months, my mother and I continued to meet regularly. Sometimes it was coffee, sometimes it was lunch. Once we went to a museum together, something we used to do when I was younger. It felt strange and new and fragile, like we were building a relationship from scratch rather than repairing an old one. My father, I didn't see at all. He sent one email about a month after the wedding. It was short and formal. Sarah, I hope you're well. I'm sorry the wedding situation became so complicated. I'm not ready to talk yet, but perhaps someday, Michael. I responded with equal formality. I'm well. I hope you are too. I'll be here when you're ready to have an honest conversation. I didn't hear from him again. My grandmother kept me updated on how he was doing. He's struggling, she told me one Sunday afternoon when I stopped by her house. He knows he made mistakes, but he doesn't know how to fix them. Pride is a terrible thing, Sarah. It makes people choose being right over being happy. I'm not asking him to admit he was wrong, I said. I'm just asking him to be honest about why he did what he did. That might be even harder for him, she said sadly. Meanwhile, Marcus and I settled into married life. We bought a house, a charming older home that needed work but had good bones, much like our relationship, we joked. We adopted a rescue dog, a goofy golden retriever mix named Cooper, who immediately became the center of our world. We had game nights with friends. We hosted Thanksgiving dinner for Marcus's family and my grandmother. We built routines and traditions and all the small things that make a life together. And slowly, the drama of the wedding began to fade into the background. It was still part of our story, but it wasn't the whole story anymore. Our first anniversary fell on a Sunday. Marcus and I decided to spend it at the same lake venue where we'd gotten married, just the two of us this time. We packed a picnic lunch and sat by the water, reminiscing about that chaotic, beautiful, painful, perfect day. Can you believe it's been a year? Marcus asked, his arm around my shoulders as we watched the sunlight dance on the water. Some days it feels like forever ago, I said. Other days it feels like yesterday. Any regrets? I thought about it seriously. Did I regret exposing my parents' secrets in front of 150 people? Did I regret the family fractures and the difficult conversations and all the pain that had come with choosing truth? No, I said finally. I don't regret it. I wish things had been different. I wish my parents had made better choices 28 years ago. I wish my father could have gotten past his own insecurity. But I don't regret telling the truth. Me neither, Marcus said. Because that day, standing up there watching you face down all that pain and fear and choose honesty anyway, that's when I knew I'd married the strongest person I'd ever meet. I leaned into him, comfortable and content in a way I never could have been if I'd stayed silent. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from my mother. Happy anniversary, sweetheart. So proud of you and Marcus. Dinner next week? I smiled and texted back, dinner sounds good, thank you. Things with my mother had improved significantly over the past year. We'd never get back what we'd lost, that innocence, that unquestioning trust, but we built something new, something adult and honest and, in its own way, more real than what had come before. We had regular dinners where we actually talked about real things. She'd told me more about her life, her struggles, her own complicated relationship with her parents. I'd shared my writing with her. I'd started working on a memoir about the whole experience. We were getting to know each other as adults rather than as mother and child, and that shift had been surprisingly healing. My father was a different story. I'd seen him exactly twice in the past year. Once at a family funeral, where we'd exchanged awkward pleasantries and avoided any real conversation, and once when he'd shown up at my house unannounced. That second visit had been 3 months ago. I'd opened the door to find him standing there, looking older and more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. "Sarah," he'd said, "can we talk?" We'd sat in my living room for 2 hours. He'd apologized, though it was clear how much the words cost him. He'd explained as best he could about his insecurity and fear and the way his own father's harsh masculinity had damaged him. He'd admitted that seeing me with Marcus had triggered all his worst fears about inadequacy and failure. "I know I should have been better," he'd said, his voice rough. "I know I should have loved you enough to get past my own demons, but I didn't. And I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough to make up for a lifetime of distance and the ultimate betrayal of missing my wedding. But it was something, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. I'm not ready to have you back in my life regularly," I'd told him honestly. "But I appreciate you coming here." "I appreciate the apology." He'd nodded, accepted the boundaries, and left. We'd texted a few times since then, always awkward, always careful. But it was progress. Slow, painful progress. Marcus and I finished our picnic and walked along the lake hand in hand. We talked about the year past and the years ahead. About maybe starting a family someday. About career goals and travel dreams and all the normal things married couples discuss. "You know what I realized?" I said as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "The wedding wasn't really about my parents at all. I mean, yes, their lies and abandonment were the catalyst. But what that day was really about was me claiming my own truth, refusing to live in someone else's narrative anymore." "And how does it feel?" Marcus asked. "Living in your own narrative?" I thought about it, about the book I was writing, about the relationship I was rebuilding with my mother, about the boundaries I'd set with my father, about the life Marcus and I were creating together, built on honesty and mutual respect. "It feels free," I said simply. "It feels like I can finally breathe." As we drove home that evening, I thought about where I'd been a year ago, standing at that altar, heart pounding, about to reveal secrets that had been hidden for nearly 3 decades. It had been terrifying. It had been painful. It had changed everything. But it had also been necessary. Because you can't build a life on lies. You can try. My parents had tried for 27 years, but eventually the foundation cracks. Eventually, the truth comes out. The only question is whether you control that revelation or whether it controls you. I'd chosen to control it. To speak my truth on my terms. And while the fallout had been difficult, while relationships had been damaged and rebuilt in new configurations, I'd never once regretted that choice. When we got home, Cooper greeted us at the door with his usual enthusiasm, and we spent the evening on the couch, Marcus, me, and our ridiculous dog, watching TV and just being together. This was my life now. Not perfect, but honest. Not always easy, but real. Built on truth rather than lies, on choice rather than obligation, and that made all the difference. 2 years after my wedding, I received a letter. An actual physical letter postmarked from Seattle addressed in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it curiously and pulled out 3 pages of neat, careful script. "Dear Sarah," it began. "You don't know me, but I believe I might be your biological father." My hands started shaking. Marcus, who'd been making dinner in the kitchen, came over immediately. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I just handed him the letter. He read the first line and his eyes went wide. The letter explained that the man writing to me, his name was David Chen, had worked with my mother at an engineering firm in the early 1990s. They'd had a brief relationship that ended when he'd accepted a job in Seattle. He'd never known she was pregnant. He'd moved on with his life, married, had other children, built a career. But 6 months ago, one of his daughters had done a DNA ancestry test for fun, and that test had flagged a genetic match to someone in our area, me. "I contacted your mother," the letter continued. "She confirmed what I suspected, that you were born in October 1997, approximately 9 months after our relationship ended. She told me about the circumstances, about how you only recently learned the truth about your parentage. She gave me your address and said it was up to you whether you wanted to meet me. I won't blame you if you don't want contact with me. I wasn't there for your childhood because I didn't know you existed, but that doesn't erase the fact that I wasn't there. I just wanted you to know that you have a biological father who, if you're willing, would very much like to get to know you. You also have 3 half-siblings daughters, aged 16, 14, and 11, who are incredibly excited to learn they have an older sister." The letter went on to provide his phone number, email address, and photos of him and his family. I studied the photos with something like awe. There were features I recognized: the shape of my nose, the curl of my hair, the way I smiled. Things I'd never seen in the man I'd called Dad, suddenly explained by this stranger's face. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked gently, sitting beside me on the couch. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to crumple this up and pretend I never got it. Part of me is curious. And part of me is terrified of what it means." "You don't have to decide right now," Marcus said. "You can sit with it. Think about it." I nodded, but I already knew what I was going to do. Because I'd learned something important over the past 2 years. Truth might be painful, but it was always worth pursuing. 3 weeks later, I met David Chen for coffee at the same cafe where my mother and I had had our first honest conversation after the wedding. It felt fitting somehow. Another chapter of truth beginning in the same place. He was nervous. I was nervous. For the first 10 minutes, we made awkward small talk about Seattle weather and how he'd found the address of the cafe. Then he said, "Sarah, I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect you to call me Dad, or to treat me like a father, or to integrate me into your life in any particular way. I just wanted to meet you. To know you. To tell you that if I had known about you, I would have been there. Would you?" I asked. Not accusingly, just genuinely curious. "You barely knew my mother. You took a job across the country. Would you really have stayed?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Honestly, I don't know. I was 24, ambitious, maybe not ready to be a father, but I like to think I would have tried. That I would have at least been present in your life somehow." We talked for 3 hours that day. He told me about his life, his career in technology, his wife, who knew about our meeting and was supportive, his daughters. I told him about my childhood, my career in writing, my marriage to Marcus, my complicated relationship with my parents, or parent, as the case might be. "Your mother is very sorry," David said at one point. "When I spoke with her, she asked me to tell you that. She knows she should have told me about you. Should have given me the choice to be involved. She made a lot of mistakes," she said. "She did," I agreed. "But she's working on them. We both are." Before he left, David asked if I'd be willing to meet his daughters, my half-sisters, sometime in the future. "No pressure," he added quickly. "Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. They're already asking about you constantly." "I'd like that," I found myself saying. "Maybe not tomorrow, but yes, I'd like to meet them." Over the next 6 months, I slowly got to know David and his family. It was strange, building a relationship with a biological father at age 29, but also nice. He was kind, genuine, funny in a dad joke kind of way. and his daughters were delightful, curious, and welcoming, and surprisingly mature about the whole situation. I didn't call him Dad. Michael was Dad, even with all our complications. David was David, a biological father who was becoming a friend. My mother was supportive of the relationship, which surprised me. "I'm glad he found you," she said when I told her about meeting him. "I'm glad you have the chance to know him. It's what I should have given you from the beginning." Michael, my dad, had a harder time with it. When I mentioned I was in contact with David, he gotten quiet and ended our phone call shortly after. We didn't speak for 2 months following that conversation, but eventually he called back. "I've been thinking," he said without preamble, "about David, about you knowing him. And I realized something. You having a relationship with your biological father doesn't erase anything about us. I raised you. I taught you to ride a bike. I sat through all your school plays. I was there for your first heartbreak and your first job interview. Maybe I wasn't there for your wedding, and that's something I'll regret until the day I die, but I was there for 27 years before that. That has to count for something." "It does, Dad," I said, and I heard him catch his breath at the word Dad. "It counts for a lot." Our relationship was still careful, still healing, but it was there. Damaged but not destroyed. And maybe that was enough. If you'd told me 3 years ago that my wedding day would involve exposing my family's deepest secrets in front of 150 guests, I would have thought you were describing a nightmare. And in some ways, it was. The pain of learning about my mother's affair, the betrayal of my parents' refusal to attend, the confusion of discovering my entire identity had been built on lies, all of that was excruciating, but it was also liberating. Because here's what I learned through all of this: secrets don't protect people, they imprison them. My mother thought she was protecting me by hiding the truth about my parentage. My father thought he was protecting his pride by refusing to face what my existence represented. My family thought they were protecting everyone by pressuring me to stay silent and not rock the boat. But none of that was protection. It was control. It was fear. It was the desperate attempt to avoid consequences that were going to catch up eventually anyway. The truth is messy. It's uncomfortable. It forces people to confront things they'd rather ignore. But it's also the only foundation strong enough to build a real life on. When I stood at that altar and told everyone about the lies that had shaped my existence, I wasn't trying to punish my parents. I was trying to free myself, to stop carrying secrets that had never been mine to carry in the first place. To stand in my own truth instead of someone else's narrative. And you know what? It worked. My relationship with my mother is better now than it ever was when it was built on lies. It's more honest, more adult, more real. We can talk about difficult things because we've already faced the most difficult thing. We can disagree because we're not trying to maintain a perfect facade anymore. My relationship with my father is still complicated, still damaged. But at least now it's based on honesty. He knows I know the truth. I know he knows, I know. There's no more pretending. And my relationship with Marcus, my marriage, is built on the strongest foundation possible. He's seen me at my absolute worst, dealing with the most painful revelations of my life, and he's never wavered. We've learned to face difficulty together, to communicate honestly, to choose each other even when things get hard. That's the kind of marriage I want. Not perfect, but real. Not always easy, but always honest. I'm often asked if I regret what I did at my wedding, if I would handle things differently if I could do it over again. And my answer is always the same. I wouldn't change a thing, because that day, standing in front of everyone I loved and everyone who'd hurt me, I chose myself. I chose truth over comfort. I chose freedom over approval. I chose to be the author of my own story instead of a supporting character in someone else's lies, and that choice changed everything. It changed how I see my family. It changed how I understand my identity. It changed how I approach my relationships. It taught me that I'm strong enough to stand alone if I have to, and lucky enough not to have to, because Marcus stands with me. Most importantly, it taught me that you can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't fix what you won't face. And you can't build something real on a foundation of lies, no matter how well-intentioned those lies might be. My truth went public on my wedding day, and yes, there were consequences. Relationships were damaged, reputations were affected. Some family members still haven't forgiven me for airing dirty laundry so publicly, but I'm free. I'm honest. I'm building a life that belongs entirely to me, shaped by my choices rather than by other people's secrets. And that's worth everything. So if you're reading this and you're carrying secrets that don't belong to you, or living in lies that someone else created, or staying silent to keep the peace at the cost of your own truth, I want you to know something. You deserve to live in truth. You deserve relationships built on honesty. You deserve to be seen and loved for exactly who you are, not who other people need you to be. The road to truth might be painful. It might cost you relationships you thought would last forever. It might force you to rebuild your understanding of yourself and your family, but on the other side of that pain is freedom. And freedom is worth fighting for. My wedding day didn't look like the fairy tale I'd imagined as a little girl. It was messier, more complicated, more painful, but it was also more real, more true, more mine. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Sometimes the truth breaks things. Relationships fracture. Facades crumble. The image of the perfect family or the perfect life shatters into pieces that can never quite be put back together the same way. But those broken pieces can be rearranged into something new, something honest, something stronger than what was there before. Secrets are like poison. They might stay hidden for years, even decades, but they're always working beneath the surface, corrupting everything they touch. The only antidote is truth, even when that truth is painful to speak and painful to hear. Family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about showing up, telling the truth, and choosing each other, even when things get difficult. The people who truly love you will support you in your truth. The people who only loved the lie you were living will fall away. And as painful as that loss is, it creates space for real, honest connections to flourish. You don't have to carry other people's secrets. You don't have to live in a narrative someone else created for you. You have the right and the responsibility to tell your own story, claim your own truth, and build a life that belongs entirely to you. It won't be easy. Truth rarely is, but it will be real. And real is always better than perfect.